Welcome to the Procurement Software Podcast, where we aim to educate and inspire you about how technology is changing and shaping our profession. The truth is, there's never been a more exciting time to be in procurement, but only if you're one of those organizations that's embracing the change and driving new developments. And this podcast is all about giving you the tools to help you get there. So buckle up and let's get right into this week's show. Yes, and a very warm welcome to our final episode of the Procurement Software Podcast for 2025. Don't know about you, but it really feels like this year has flown by. Something a little bit different this month. I'm actually publishing an interview that I recorded with the two co-founders of professional services software sourcing firm Apadua when I got to attend and speak at their in-house event back in September. They put on a great event in a lovely hotel just outside of Frankfurt, Germany. And I interviewed Gregory and Markus as part of their content that they were looking to put out during the event and after the event as well, actually. And with their kind permission, I'm republishing this today. The discussion talks a little bit about their product, but it's mainly more about a philosophical look into the future in terms of what procurement will look like and what shifts need to take place to ensure that we remain relevant and that procurement in your organization has a healthy and prosperous future. I really enjoyed listening back to it when they sent me the video, so I decided to publish this as this month's December podcast episode. It's about 35 minutes long, so I'm going to cut straight to the interview and hope you enjoy it. Very warm welcome to this videocast. I'm here with Gregory and Markus, two co-founders of Apadua, and we're here at their IPD event in a beautiful hotel on the outskirts of Frankfurt. Looking forward to having some really insightful and cool conversations over the next couple of days. But for now, we're going to do a brief interview and talk a little bit about AI in procurement technology, some of the challenges, some of the future predictions, and really talk through Apadua's journey around building an AI native procurement platform. Before we do, guys, if you want to maybe just give a quick intro to yourselves and the product, and then we'll dig right in.
Yeah, my name is Markus. I'm one of the founders. I'm responsible for the product. So I'm pretty happy to have that conversation with you about AI and all the rest. And this is my colleague, Gregory.
Yeah, I'm Gregory, the other co-founder of Apadua. Good to have you here. I'm looking forward to great conversations during the event and meeting a lot of clients, but also some potential clients, obviously. Let's do this.
I'm a big fan of micro events, actually. I love them. And obviously, I was here last year and I came back. So you're obviously doing something right with the format. Apadua has been around for a while. You were founded, I think, 2016, and then you really started to sort of grow and scale round about the onset of COVID, so 2020. That obviously means that historically, the platform didn't take advantage of the latest technology that's out there. So I guess it's been a bit of a journey in terms of being able to go from what the product previously was to what you want it to be. There's a lot of confusion out there in the market generally around AI. And I ran a poll on my LinkedIn profile a couple of months ago, just asking procurement practitioners, what are the challenges around you getting started in AI? Because my perception was that it was perhaps IT being the blocker. But what in reality came out, the most common answer was confusion. Can you maybe explain to a 6-year-old, as the phrase always goes, how can someone tell whether a product really does have AI in it or whether it's just marketing?
So let's say, and take it from the user point of view, and let's say that 6-year-old just learning to ride a bicycle is that user. In the end, it doesn't really matter why that bike doesn't fall to the side, right? It just runs. And this is more or less what we did with our software before AI kicked in. So we had a software that worked. It worked well. It supported the process and the result was good without AI. But now all this big wave and those trends around AI, ignited a little bit by the ChatGPT wave that came in 2022, that kind of forces you in a way to also use that technology, but not to put it as a marketing catchphrase, but really to even improve what you already have. And this is where we started off, actually. So the conventional software was there, it worked, the result was good. And now there is AI, and we as a company to think about how we can take really advantage of that and not just follow the trend.
To quote the great philosophers, Def Leppard, you don't always want to be 2 steps behind. So how do you go then from having that sort of legacy or existing software products, and what was your thought process around where you want to take it to enable you to sort of always be at the cutting edge of what the customer wants, but also what the technological trends are going forward?
Let's start with 2 hypotheses for using AI. One hypothesis is you replace human labor. There's no human necessary for certain tasks, if you believe some of the people now predicting what AI use will be like in a few years. The other hypothesis is, and that's with the category we fall in, is empowering people. Using AI as a tool, if you will, as an exoskeleton for people. So you still do the lifting, but instead of lifting 50 pounds, you will be able to maybe lift 500 pounds. And I think that's the real difference. And that's the first tell whether there's AI somewhere really embedded in what's going on is ease of use and gain of efficiency. It doesn't have to be AI in that process, but usually that's the indicator, right? The next thing is, why would anyone want to use AI? We have the hypothesis people will use AI or want to use AI to make their life or work easier. The expectation would be that the providers of AI build products that actually meet that expectation. But again, following the second hypothesis I gave, is still there's a human in the loop. And from all what I hear and see, that still will be the case for some time. Let's look at all the predictions about the use of AI to drive a car, right? There are very interesting supporting systems in most of the modern cars now that help you to drive the car more safely. There's only a few car brands out there that really have an autonomous car at the moment. I'm not saying that we won't get there for the car. There may be a misconception of how fast we will get there. And at the end of the day, maybe it will look different than what we expect now. Predictions in the AI space are super hard. I would guarantee that everything some expert in AI predicts now that would carry next year would not age that well.
If I look at it a little bit more philosophically, if you look at the potential impact that this could have on society at large and countries and systems, everyone that's out there saying AI is going to replace 80% of not just procurement jobs, any sort of white collar jobs in 2 to 3 years' time, if that really did happen and there were no checks and balances, there would be some sort of civil unrest, right? If you put 80% of people on the unemployment line, there would be some sort of civil conflict resulting from it. So I believe that that's the general trend, and it will slowly but surely happen, that AI will replace human labor, at least the parts that don't require, emotional intelligence and thinking and persuasion and storytelling and all the sort of soft skills that everyone says are very, very important in the procurement professionals' ideal toolkit of the future. But yeah, I would go along with that. If we go along then with the basis that there's going to be a necessity to have human in the loop for the foreseeable future, like you say, Gregory, no one can predict the longer term. It's every procurement professional's dream, surely, or everyone that wants to do a strategic sort of senior level procurement role, that they don't have to do a lot of this research and administrative drudgery when it comes to running a sourcing event or doing due diligence on a supplier or putting together a category strategy. So walk me through then, based on what you've developed in your product, where will there still be a need to have human checks and balances within that?
I would like to take a step back here, because you said something very important that I don't necessarily agree with, where AI will replace human labor. I agree that some of the tasks, some of the activities human will now perform will be in the future be performed by a robot or an AI agent or a combination of both. We've seen that in the 60s, 70s when robotics came. Still, there were no long lines in front of the unemployment offices or something. I look at it a little differently. And there's an MIT Sloan report or study that came out recently that discusses a very interesting observation. That observation is, now that everybody uses AI and they more or less use the same LLMs, they use the same data to train their LLM, using AI is not a differentiator. It's becoming more and more a commodity. So let me compare that to these cooking shows where all the chefs have the same ingredients. My feeling is that if we had replaced the chefs, the food that they will produce from the same ingredients will all be more or less the same. If you have the human in the loop, then you will produce different results. What that boils down to is when you use a commodity, it comes back to the human again to make the difference, to be entrepreneurial, more creative, thinking outside of the box. Again, if you're a company and you're laying off all these creative people at the moment, I hope you're keeping your A players, because you need these people in the future again to interact with whatever AI you have in place, because that's going to be the differentiator. Not the model that you use, not the training data, because most of the companies, they train on publicly available data, and that publicly available data is more and more being bastardized by AI data. Training data after 2023 may, after a while, not be super relevant anymore. That just to add to the point where I think the human in the loop, and I can be super wrong about all I'm saying here, and I can prove it, but I can't disprove what you said earlier. But that's at least where I am now, it makes perfect sense to me. If everybody has the same tools, it's really coming back to down to the people that use these tools.
What I would add to that is, and I'm a big fan of AI, right? I cannot hide that fact. And I would always say and look positively at AI, but still I also look very realistically at AI. We as a software company, and we're doing software for procurement, we as a software company are starting to learn how to apply AI in our software, as well as our users are starting to use AI and make the best out of it, embedded in a software like ours or with standalone third-party products.
Yeah.
So all of us, we're just learning. So we've learned how to ride that bicycle before AI. And now we're deciding whether we're going to go downhill or whether we're going to go on a street race. It's just the next level of proficiency that we can achieve. And now we have an additional tool, which is called AI. So basically for us, this learning path starts with human in the loop. We need to understand how they use AI, how happy they are with the results. So the customer satisfaction, user satisfaction is one of the most important KPIs for us when we apply any type of feature. Could be a small little widget, gadget that we put into the process, or something that is more like an umbrella, like overall process assistant that helps, like an agent, for example, that helps through the process with an AI feature behind. So I think this learning process is super important, and it changes also the way how people perceive software. Before, software was zeros and ones, right? Pretty straightforward. You knew it was a hard-coded process and the result was expected, always. AI changes that. And so we need to change the way we use software, because the result today can be this and tomorrow it can be that. It might be a little different, not entirely, but a little. So we need to learn how to use those. And we also try to help our users to understand how AI works in the background. So afterwards, you asked about how we approach this in our software. So let's go now into more the depths of how you develop a software from a conventional tool, which it was before 2021, 22. And actually, we started to use AI before ChatGPT, learning then software like ChatGPT and all the models that are available now in the thousands, right? We're not talking about 5 models. We're talking about thousands of models that we could apply, have overtaken our efforts within a few months, which is obvious because other companies focus on that. So we thought about our software. What do we need to do? Where do we need to apply AI? So we could have gone down the road to say, okay, this is our software. So let's now inject a little bit of AI here and a little bit of AI there, and we're done. We looked at each other and said, no, that's not going to be our path. Why? Because that old software was built on the assumption that you need a very robust process, that you go from A to Z and then there's a result. With AI, you can do it differently. And this is what we've started. So we basically put everything that we had code-wise in the bin, and we started from scratch all over again with all the experience that we collected. So first step to finally answer your question was interviewing our users. So we asked them, what do you expect from a new software? And by the way, it will be AI supported, which changes the question.
Yeah.
Because otherwise he would have told you, I want to be a little quicker. No, if you tell them, hey, there's going to be AI, they will tell you, I want to have this automated. This must be cooler. And here I want to get a completely new insight to my data, which I usually do in a cumbersome process in Excel, for example. So this is the very first step, interviewing the users. And this is what we did for 3 or 4 months before we started the actual development of the tool.
And that plus what you said as well before, Gregory, around you better hang on to your A players, I think that changes the game, doesn't it, in terms of the role that a human, that a procurement manager or sourcing manager would have previously, or even currently, if you look at a lot of sort of quite traditional organizations, plays within procurement. A lot of the work that they do, it requires some thought, but it's a fairly rigid process that they follow, and the steps that they take are fairly manual, and a lot of those, not all of them, but a lot of those tasks can be aided now by AI applications that are out there. If it's done in the right way, and if the guardrails are there, and if it sits within a software like Apadua, how will the role of that procurement professional, do you feel, change if they're able to leverage a product like yours to be able to take a lot of that work away, but then their skill set and their necessary mindset and the way that they communicate with the business will then also need to change, right? Because instead of doing a lot of back office work, I suspect that it's going to free up a lot of time for them to be, I guess, a little bit more like a sales or a marketing person, being much more customer facing.
But look at it from a management point of view. We tend to look at it from a user point of view only, or the single person's point of view. And that person might say, okay, I'm doing this today. This is 100% of my day. And if AI kicks in, I'm going to lose my job someday. I would look at it differently. Now with AI, management is expecting not less, but more work from you. So basically, that's a different viewpoint looking at it. So with AI, you're able to handle different topics, and this is the key point, more complex topics. I would support the statement that very low-level operational processes, once they're automated, these people will be having other jobs, right? But on that more tactical and strategical level, especially in procurement, where a lot of knowledge is required, a lot of stakeholder management is required, and the experience, the expectation towards a single person's daily job and the result of this daily job will not be less, but more. So I would just turn this narrative around and say, take care, because you might have higher expectations now in your targets than before, because now you use AI. So maybe that fear that comes along with the buzzword AI and people are going to lose their jobs is wrong for this part we look at with our software, because I'm pretty sure there will be more events on a platform that has AI because management is expecting you to do more work. It will be more complex and maybe even more interaction is required. So we are a little far away from full automation there, and we don't need people anymore. That's basically the statement.
I mean, at least that's our hypothesis at the moment, right? And that may change over time. We learn every day. And what I feel from what I see with all these AI agents now being applied by our customers, but also by our service providers, right? I recently read, probably screw up the numbers, but I think McKinsey let go 5,000 or 45,000 people, 5,000 or 45,000 people. And at the same time, I think they introduced about 12,000 AI agents or something like that.
Microsoft did the same, right? They cut 9,000 roles recently because they want to make their company sort of AI ready. And yeah.
So let's look at that. What does that mean? That means to me that very likely you will get away from the trend that we saw recently, where you train people to be specialists. I could imagine that we will see a trend where we train people to be more generalist again. So instead of, let's look at procurement, right? Let's look at strategic, tactical, and operational procurement. Today, these are separate functions. And maybe even we can go across these rigid lines of direct and indirect, right? But let's look at these three different procurement fields of strategic procurement, tactical procurement, and operational procurement. So assuming you inject AI in each of these three processes and you automate a bunch of the tasks within these processes, you will need less people, very likely. Some have the hypothesis that you will get rid of people rather in the operational tasks or activities than in the strategic. So, but you still need people there. It probably makes sense to understand procurement more comprehensively now, to understand how strategic procurement works, how tactical procurement works, but also how operational procurement works, because then you can orchestrate manually, or I'm using that word because there are platforms that promise orchestration, AI orchestration nowadays. But I think the real orchestration will still be done by human, right? And these humans need to understand, okay, the basics of strategic procurement, the basics of tactical procurement and operational procurement to be able to orchestrate, or let's say moderate, the activities of all these AI agents. So this is one scenario, and I'm pretty bullish on that scenario until somebody shows me something else, that we will see more generalist career paths again. And then closing the loop to these McKinsey people that have been let go, if they're not from the back office, but from the client-facing side, right? That's good news for them, because usually consultants are generalists. B and C candidates from consulting companies may be very good A candidates for companies out there. And then obviously you ask yourself, okay, what happens to the candidates in these larger corporations that get washed out, right? That's obviously, but there will be tasks for human. I'm not so pessimistic about using AI, because I'm a kid of the 90s, right? And I saw the internet come and stay, but I can really remember all these new internet things that came and went again. So I'm quite optimistic that AI will be a net positive for humankind, but I'm aware of the risk, but that's obviously going beyond what we want to speak about today. But yeah, I'm still very optimistic. Otherwise, I wouldn't be working for an AI company, would I? So
yeah, I share most of that as well, actually. I definitely agree with you, Gregory. I think that the truth is nobody knows, right? But I would also see, the way I see the winds blowing, I also see a shift towards more generalist roles coming back. And I think that's good news in a way, because it means it makes it a little bit easier because everyone's saying, with AI, if there are no tactical roles anymore, how do young graduates or newcomers into the profession get the foothold? But I think if that prerequisite for having X number of years of specific category experience goes away now because of AI-assisted category level, market level intelligence, you don't need the guy or the girl that's 20 years in the same position that knows everything about chemicals or stamped parts or whatever it is that they're buying. So I definitely see that trend. I think where maybe I diverge a little bit from your view is, I think I would see it becoming a little bit more flat. I see the role of category manager potentially going away. I don't see category management as a concept going away. I mean, I think that's still very, very relevant. But I think a category manager is quite siloed, because if that supplier delivers across multiple categories, they're very narrow vision in terms of what they manage. So I think as we move towards more holistic, strategic supplier management, should we say, for want of a better term, I think category management will just become part of a wider role that person.
Yeah, but a category manager is a specialist.
Yes.
So, and you're making my point, actually. So we don't disagree. So let's look at that specific function of a category manager. I've been a category manager in the past, right? I bought all kinds of different direct materials. I think I started with forged parts, right? And metal parts, right? And then eventually in another company, I bought plastic injection molded parts. The methodology of category management was the same. Obviously, the products I bought, the categories that I bought were different.
And that's not going to go away, right?
Exactly. So in a sense, if you have seen more than one category in your career as a buyer, and I would strongly suggest that you try and do, and most of the larger corporations do that anyway, so you don't get stuck with the same, for compliance reasons also, with the same supplier base, right? So most of the companies that I know move around their category managers quite a bit. You become a generalist within the field of category management almost automatically if that happens. Still, you should understand what comes before category management and after in the whole spectrum of sub-processes in procurement. But that's actually exactly what I'm saying. So maybe in the future, we will have an injection molding category manager, let's say, that also manages the fleet, to find a really extreme example, and moderates and orchestrates the agents that actually do the buying, the negotiating, and the supplier management in that specific category.
And let's be true to ourselves, right? Those studies you mentioned, 80%, like 2 weeks ago, there was like a important noise and voice on the media saying like 99% of the jobs might be lost in 3 years. But honestly, we as humans, we are very slow adopters.
Yeah.
So even if the technology was there, like electric engines, back in the 20s of the last century, electric engines were like 20-30% of every car. Even those technologies were there, we didn't adopt them like this.
How long did it take for everyone to get a smartphone, for a more recent example?
Exactly. Yeah. And this is a small adoption, right?
Yeah.
And if we now talk about the fear of everyone losing their jobs, even if it was possible from a technological point of view, society is not a quick adopter.
Yeah.
So that will take time, and it will take time for a society, it will take time for a company, it will take time for a profession like procurement or even category management. So it's not going to be that flip the switch and now everyone's losing their jobs. So that's why I'm looking at this more realistically. Even though I like the vision of AI, what it's capable of doing in the future, I think realistically, we're going to see stepwise injections of AI in different fields, and that will change roles and job models, etc., but not necessarily like disrupt the most important part of the society, the working people, right? So I'm not fearful with that. I'm actually pretty positive.
Yeah. Let's do a quick straw poll, actually. I want to get to the end because I know you've gone through a journey around getting ISO 27001, and I wanted to touch on cybersecurity as well, because I hear more and more about it, especially platforms that sell more to sort of enterprise level organizations. But before we do, to your point, Markus, let's do a quick straw poll. In 5 years' time, how big do you anticipate procurement teams will be in relation? If we say today is 100, do you think we'll be at 80, 70, 50? What would you say in 5 years' time?
Well, it's a good one. I think the shares will shift, first of all. So if we still have, let's say, 2/3 in operational procurement and 1/3 in strategical, that would probably shift.
Yeah.
So it will invert. That's the one answer. And the second answer is, it's really hard to say. If I look at it positively, if procurement gets where they want to be, become more important in an organization, they will at least be as large as they are today.
Because you think that the mandate will grow as a CFO and a COO sees the holistic benefit that they deliver to the organization, if it's done right.
I started consulting in 2010, and the big headline was procurement must be a management role.
Yeah.
And that was 2010. Now we're 2025. We're still struggling to say it.
Yeah.
Not talking about really implementing it. So you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But I think one of the key targets would be for companies, let's grow the business, but let's not grow substantially the procurement department. Let's become more efficient, more effective with technology.
Yeah. Yeah, great answer. Gregory?
I'm struggling with the question in a sense because I think it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter whether procurement will still even exist or not, right? Because companies will still, if we look at companies like they are structured today, you have input, then you produce something, and then you have an output. As long as that's the case, someone has to be responsible for bringing that input in. Let's call that function procurement for the moment. I like to think in scenarios. So I think there's a scenario where we look at procurement teams being the size of 0 to 50% of what they are today. I think another scenario is between 50 and 100%. But I think there's actually even scenarios where we're looking at 100 to 150% of where we are today. To break down these scenarios, I think it will take a little longer than 30 or 60 minutes. But basically, if we see full automation, replacement of human labor at scale, then we're looking at the scenario 0 to 50%. But that would not be true only for procurement, but for all corporate functions.
And maybe not in 5 years.
Maybe not in 5 years. So we're talking, there are a couple variants here, right? One of the variants is time. One of the variant is the function in itself, right? And the tasks, and some other variants as well, but variables rather. So I think from the scenarios, I think the most realistic one from where I stand based on the information that I have today is procurement will still be around. And the main task for procurement still to make sure that input that we need to produce the output is done, right? So my assumption would be, most realistically, we're looking at 50 to 100% of the size of the procurement teams today, which does not mean that everybody else will lose their job. Maybe they do something else. And also, I mean, at least in Germany, I read somewhere that in the next 5 to 10 years, about 20 to 25% of the workforce will leave the labor market.
Through retirement, you mean? Yeah.
Through retirement.
Yeah.
So maybe automation, and not only automation by AI, but also by using AI, is a gift to our society.
Because it gets around this demographic black hole.
Exactly.
Aging population.
Exactly. Because Germany is, at least Germany, and I think it's very similar across Europe as well, we're looking at aging societies. And I'm pretty sure that we cannot replace all these people, even if we wanted to. So then finding technology, and maybe AI is that technology, to help us sustain our welfare and the functioning of our society today.
If you had to ask me the same question, I would probably say, from what I know and what I can predict, probably about teams will be perhaps 30% smaller, and that would chime in. So if we take your number, that 25% roughly of the German workforce will retire over the next sort of 5 to 10 years, it could then theoretically be done without any sort of negative social impact in terms of unemployment, right?
Exactly. And we haven't seen a lot of productivity gains in Germany recently in the last couple decades.
Or anywhere in Europe, really.
Right?
Yeah.
So I see a huge opportunity here for Germany, for Europe, maybe even for mankind, to solve some of the challenges that we are facing right now in a business environment, in a social requirement, in a just globally, right? So I'm quite hopeful still. There are some other. I think in scenarios there are some bad scenarios, but they will be bad for everyone. So procurement doesn't matter anymore then, right? So then we're going back to the dark ages or something.
Okay. I wanted to sort of finish on cybersecurity. So you recently achieved ISO 27001 in May. Can you walk me through what was it that drove you to get that? And perhaps if a potential customer or someone that's curious about buying a sourcing platform out there is concerned about cybersecurity, what should they be asking for in their provider? You know, whether they have ISO 27001 or not, what should be the key questions that they should be that they should be keen to know from potential software companies?
Let me try to be quick with the walkthrough why we did that. So it was ignited by us being a software company. And as our clients rely more on software and maybe less on people, depending on which scenario we look at, this software must be robust. So I think it's natural for a software company to pursue a certification for cybersecurity, in that case, the ISO 27001. So one reason is clients expect that from us. We need to show that what we do follows a certain standard, and the standard we choose, there are other standards out there. The standard we choose because the mostly applied standard is the ISO. Secondly, we need to create awareness among our team that the software is not just used, but that those companies, large corporations that we have, rely on that software. So not only the software, but the system around it. And system includes the people, the processes, and the organization. So the question was, how do we convey that message? And then a certification is a very good tool to do that. And then third, it's also marketing. You need to put such a stamp on your product and your brand to show that you're dealing with those issues and requirements from the market. Otherwise, you can explain people what you do, but then it's all based on trust. Yeah. And with the certification, you can show and not only rely on trust. So these are the three probably most important reasons why we wanted and needed to do that. And we did it from the start to the end, less than a year, together with an agency. So I think that was a good step to do it, not just by ourselves, because we wanted to learn from an agency. And we were able to pass the audit at first attempt, which was cool. I'm pretty happy about that result. So it was an important step this year for us to achieve that.
When we set out to start what today is apadua and what today is our platform, we looked at it as practitioners. So Markus and I, we have a background in procurement, we have a background in consulting, and we saw there are some problems with the available systems. So we wanted to build something cool, something helpful, and along that way, we realized in order to be really cool, it has to be really safe as well. The standard that you measure the level of security with is the ISO certification. So for me as a non-tech person, and I have not been involved in the ISO certification process too much, right? My expectation was always, I don't want to get the certification only. I want this to work out really well. I want to get something out of it. I'm not going in Germany we have the TÜV, right? The technical body where you have to bring your car on a regular basis to have it checked out. Some people bring it there to just get the certificate and drive off. I go there because I rely on my car to be safe enough to carry my family in it. And maybe that's the difference. I don't go there for the certificate only. I go there also because it's required. And maybe if I had more time, I would do it 2 months later or whatever. But I go there also to make sure my system runs, does what it's supposed to do, and I can reduce the risks related to using a platform. And that for me was super important. To be aware that there are risks, to be aware that we need to address these risks and have practices in place to deal with things that come up, right? And things come up. I would never tell you that any software that you use is 100% secure, but ISO certification 27001 and other certifications, right, help you to somehow maximize the level of security and reduce risks. And that's what I'm looking at.
And what's important to say is it's not a one-time shot, fire and forget, right? So these reevaluations that happen every year are important because we as a company grow, our organization grows, our clients have different requirements. So the environment we're in is super dynamic. And this needs to be taken care of and will be taken care of with annual reevaluation. So it's actually an ongoing job. That stamp that I talked about is the one first step, but you need to maintain that over time. And interestingly enough, every year you go through a new audit, the requirements of the auditor will increase. So you cannot just stay idle and wait for the next audit to come. They will expect from you improvements. So the stamp in no software out there says this is a perfectly safe software, because not even the auditor knows what hackers might be doing tomorrow.
And how your platform will develop over the next 12, 24 months.
Or how regulatory requirements will change. Yeah. And we see that happening, especially with AI now. There's the EU AI Act out there. So regulatory requirements change maybe between one and the other audit. So you need to adapt to those changes. So that's why it's an ongoing process. And once you're in, you kind of lock it in as well. So we're going to go down that road for a couple of years now.
Just to wrap this up, I'm going to ask each of you in just one word or one sentence, tell me one skill that a procurement professional should learn to be able to stay relevant over the next 5 to 10 years.
Adaptiveness.
Okay. Gregory?
Empathy.
Awesome. Okay. So that wraps up the interview. We're off now to enjoy the event for the next day and a half. So thank you for watching and catch you again soon. Cheers. And that rounds up our Procurement Software Podcast for 2025. Hope you enjoyed this one. I certainly did when I listened back to it. Just a couple of quick things before I sign off. If you're interested to get a free 25-minute introductory course to the basics of AI in procurement, the link is in the show notes. I launched this a couple of weeks ago and I've had great feedback and uptake of it so far. Would love to get your thoughts, and what we're probably going to do in the pipeline for next year, if enough people want us to do it, is to put together a longer paid course that will tackle some of these specific points in much more detail. And finally, if you're looking for a contract management solution, you're fed up of using Excel and SharePoint, but you perhaps don't have a budget to go out and buy contract management software that's designed for large enterprises and legal teams specifically rather than procurement, then check out our no-code contract management app. This is everything that you need in a contract management app, but without the bloat and without the price tag of enterprise software. It's a one-time fee of $3,499, and it's a complete storage opportunity for your contracts that will also give you push notifications when they're due to expire. So just one auto renewal that this saves you will pay for the contract app in itself. It's a one-time payment. It's not a recurring SaaS product. Really think that we've built something innovative here for small procurement teams. So again, if you're interested to see a demo of that, pre-recorded demo, no need to talk to me. You can watch it in your own time. There's a link to that too in the show notes. Would love to get your thoughts on that one as well. That's all for now. I will catch you again in 2026. But until then, just want to take the time to wish you a very Merry Christmas for those of you who celebrate it, and a happy, healthy, and prosperous start to 2026. Thank you for being a listener or a subscriber of the podcast throughout the year. I really appreciate you, and I will catch you again next year. Bye for now.